So you want a cheap, small car, but you aren't sure whether to choose between an SUV or a hatchback. Back in the day, there was no option. You basically bought a small hatchback or a big SUV. But this week, I have forced myself to spend a week driving around in a subcompact SUV. This is the VW Taigo, I don't know how to say it, but T-A-I-G-O. Quite a recent subcompact SUV from the VW brand, which comes with a coupe style roof. So it's kind of like the T-Cross, but it's got a coupe sort of sloping roofline instead. And having now spent a week driving this subcompact SUV and owning a supermini at home, I've got some quite strongly held opinions about which one might be the right pick for you. My apologies if there's some serious bias in this video. I'm not the biggest SUV fan. I do like some SUVs. I'd love to own a Pajero Evo, for example. But I'm gonna do my best to be as fair as possible about this subcompact SUV class. Let's get straight into it. Now let's touch on this car very briefly. Now, the Taigo is built on the Mark VI VW Polo platform, so they share the same interiors, got the same chassis underneath, the same platform, suspension, all that kind of stuff. The main differences between this and a Polo is that this one is obviously slightly raised, a little bit higher, and the bonnet is slightly taller as well. So they've actually raised the bonnet up to make it look and feel like it's a bigger car. Probably the one thing that you care about most though is that this car has a bigger boot than the Polo. It's about 115 litres bigger, in fact. The Polo has about 300 litres of boot space. This is 415 litres of boot space, because I can fit my golf clubs in the boot of this, which I can't in the boot of the Polo without putting the seats down. For me, that's never been a massive inconvenience. I never bring more than 1 or 2 other people to golf anyway. But for some people, I see how that might be useful. Outside of those key differences though, there's not much to report really in terms of practicality. We've got a car that looks and feels a bit bigger, even if the interior feels just as big, looks exactly the same, all that kind of stuff. And right now I'm actually taking it to do something that I would expect most people to use this car for, taking it to go shopping. Thought I would give you the true experience of what this car is all about. So give me 2 minutes and I'll be back to finish off chatting to you guys. Angry car. Right, one thing I'll never get used to on modern cars is reversing cameras and stuff that beeps at me when I try and go forward or reverse. And now that shop wasn't just some random thing I had to do, it was pre-planned as part of this video. I just went shopping for me and my wife to get ourselves the stuff to survive for the week and all that kind of good stuff. So effectively, necessities that keep us going for a week of life. And in our family, there is just me, my wife, and the cat at the moment, which means that for the 2 of us, this car doesn't make any sense. I can fit all of my shopping in less than half of a Polo's boot. Now, unless I'm using this car for additional storage on my flat, I don't really understand what the benefit is. But maybe if you've got a bigger family, more people, more dependents, have to bring around buggies and all that other kind of stuff for babies, etc., maybe the extra space matters. Then let's talk about how it drives. I mean, on the one hand, right now I'm on quite a bumpy road, not very well put together, in need of a bit of love and attention, like a lot of roads in the UK, to be perfectly honest. And though it is slightly bigger, I wouldn't say the ride is any better than a typical Polo's ride. The main difference is that I'm higher, not that I'm getting a better feeling or experience from driving the car or more comfort. I'm still avoiding potholes as I would in a Polo. I'm still feeling every pothole I'm unable to miss, just like I would in the Polo. And then when I need to sneak past another car on the other side of the road or something like that, it becomes more difficult, because even though the car isn't necessarily much bigger than a Polo, it's just big enough that I have to be a little bit more cautious about where I place the car whilst overtaking and that kind of stuff. Here's a prime example. Another SUV coming on the side of the road, I need to watch out in a way that I probably wouldn't have had to in the Polo. I think also having this bigger bonnet as well means that I can't actually see the front of the car quite as well. It's a nice big bump I just went over. You can get that over time from driving it. I've driven it for a week, and so I'm very used to it now, but seeing the extremities of the car is more difficult than it is in a small, nippy car like a Polo. Now, I'd be able to make it make sense, maybe, if the car was at least all-wheel drive, but it's not all-wheel drive. It's front-wheel drive, just like the Polo, because this platform was unable to fit all-wheel drive on it, or it never had all-wheel drive given to it. So why would they bother giving the SUV all-wheel drive? Think about SUVs, they originated off the back of 4x4s. Now, you cannot get a Taigo 4x4. It's impossible. You can only get a front wheel drive, just like a hatchback. But at least if it was all wheel drive, I'd be able to say to you like, well, when times get tough, or I need to drive off-road for some kind of reason, or I need to park in a muddy car park, or the conditions are bad, or it's snowing, or it's icy, or something like that, I could tell you there's a significant benefit of owning this Taigo over the Polo that it's based on. But as it doesn't offer that, there's not much I can give you. But there's one more thing I'd add on to that 4x4 piece as well. It's not that this car is more rugged than a Polo. Think about the Polo Dune for a moment, right? It wasn't an SUV, it was just literally a Polo that had some plastic bits thrown around the front end, around the sides, etc., to make it look and feel a bit more rugged. It wasn't actually more rugged, it just had the idea or the look or the feel of it. Well, the Taigo and the T-Cross don't have the look or feel of being more rugged. They're not more rugged or more capable in terms of doing stuff like that. Does it give you a bigger engine? No. This is the 1 litre turbo 3. So I'm not buying something more powerful that I can waft along in better, all that kind of stuff. And then how does it handle? Well, it actually handles worse altogether than a supermini. It's not bad, the handling's fine, and typically you don't buy a car like this for the incredible handling or something like that, right? That's not what you're going for. But as I drive this car around, because it's a bit higher, I get a bit more body roll, and I can make the car understeer much more quickly than I can with a supermini like a Polo. So I'm just not really seeing where the benefit is of going for this bigger car outside of the boot space. And then if I was being really unkind to it, why would you go for a Taigo over a T-Cross? The Taigo and the T-Cross are still pretty much the same car. I've also driven the T-Cross, by the way. They feel very similar to drive. Now, this is obviously opinion, but I wouldn't say that the Taigo is particularly better looking in its coupe format than the traditional SUV stylings of the T-Cross. So just explain to me exactly why I would actually forego a bit of boot space going for the Taigo with that sloping roofline that limits what I might be able to fit into the back of the car, over going for a T-Cross instead. Now, obviously that's specific to this kind of SUV, like a coupe style, fine, fair enough, pushing it a little bit there, but hopefully you see what I'm saying here. And by the way, I'm being unkind, right? I'm trying to be provocative about this car, but broadly, it's a nice car. It's fine to drive, it's comfortable, the quality of the materials inside is actually really nice. Like, genuinely, I think the car is absolutely fine. I just don't necessarily understand why you would choose this over its supermini equivalent, or go for a bigger SUV. I've driven cars like the Nissan Qashqai. It was super comfortable for people sitting in the rear as opposed to getting into the back of what is effectively a Polo. It had loads of boot space. We could fit 2 or 3 suitcases in the boot of it. It was always so comfortable to drive. The fact that all of these subcompact SUVs I've driven don't offer that just makes me ask the question why you would go for this over a supermini or over an actual SUV. And the final point I wanted to raise on this exact end is that we're kind of seeing the end of the hatch era. More brands are favoring larger cars, SUVs, subcompact SUVs, whatever it is, right? SUVs are consistently the fastest growing group of cars in terms of sales year on year. Estates are on their last legs, and hatchbacks will be on their way out as well, probably at some point. Maybe we'll keep the ultra minis, like the really, really small city cars that you just wouldn't want to turn into an SUV. But VW have already spoken about getting rid of the Polo. And I bet you if the Polo goes, the Taigo and T-Cross will persist, or something like them, something more SUV focused. Now, being selfish for a moment, does that mean that we'll only end up having hot subcompact SUVs rather than hot hatches? Think of the Ford Puma ST as an example. Knowing that SUVs are that bit more ungainy when it comes to handling versus the super agile, super fun, super nippy nature of a hatchback, I think that would be a bit of a shame. So again, what outside of the boot space makes this car worth it over a hatchback? Well, I think there is one reason outside of that this car makes sense, and that's to the manufacturer. As SUVs are so popular as they are, the consistently fastest growing car class in terms of sales, of course, VW have to capitalize on that, Kia have to capitalize on that, all of the big companies have to capitalize on that and make more SUVs. They make more SUVs, they make more money, they're happy. So from a money and strategy perspective for a business, fine, I understand. But for the person buying the car, having been with this car for a week, I can't make it make any sense yet. So long story short, outside of boot space, I don't think subcompact SUVs make much sense. Either buy an SUV or buy a hatchback. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you have a subcompact SUV and it makes a lot of sense to you, then do let me know your reasons in the comments. More than willing to be challenged. This is just my experience of this car and other subcompacts like it. I am more than willing to be wrong. Thank you very much for watching. Do click like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and click on screen to see a review of a proper SUV.